The FBI is now joining the investigation to determine how a mom and her two daughters died inside a luxury Bexar County home. This comes as dozens of FBI agents say the government shutdown is hurting their ability to keep you safe.
Tonight, we're getting new insight from a former FBI agent.
The Inaqua Springs incident just is another proving point that crime does not stop just because the government shuts down.
So let's bring in Eyewitness News reporter Henry Ramos. And Henry, FBI agents do say that they're not getting paid right now, correct?
They're absolutely not, Jeff and Deborah. And tonight, according to an explosive report, agents are saying no pay. A lack of resources means a threat to national security. They're expecting to miss their second paycheck this Friday as the government shutdown continues. However, that is not stopping them from joining forces with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office to investigate the deaths of Nicole Olson and her daughters, 10-year-old London and 16-year-old Alexa. The San Antonio FBI will provide technical and investigative assistance to BCSO, adding extra expertise and resources. A person of interest in this case found the victims dead in the Inaqua Springs neighborhood nearly 2 weeks ago. The medical examiner ruled the mother's death as a suicide and the girls' deaths as homicides. But the sheriff still hasn't ruled this case as a murder-suicide. Now, according to Sheriff Javier Salazar, he says, quote, "We owe it to Nicole, Alexa, London, and their families to find the truth through meticulous investigation. It is always better to have more tools at our disposal and more eyes on the case," end quote. Tonight, former FBI agent Fred Olivares says it is not unusual for the agency to get involved in these types of cases.
It says to me they're probably looking at the crime scene, evaluating the crime scene. They could also possibly be interviewing additional witnesses. Witnesses that are out of the jurisdiction of the Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
Olivares says out of the jurisdiction means not in the county. He says the witnesses are probably located in other areas of Texas. Meanwhile, in a 72-page report, FBI agents say the government shutdown is hindering investigations into suspected terrorists, sex traffickers, and other criminals. Dozens of unnamed agents tell how the government shutdown is impacting their work in the new report from the FBI Agents Association. According to the report, field offices don't have as much money. The department can't pay confidential informants, and they can't buy drugs for drug bust. Olivares went through 2 shutdowns when he was an agent. He says at the end of the day, agents are showing up to work. He says what is suffering the most, the support they rely on to help with their investigations.
All the support employees that they rely upon are truly on furlough. They're sitting at a home. So you talk about analysts, linguists, people of that nature that are not assisting because they have been told to stay at home. And with that, the agents are hampered.
Federal funds agents use in cases cut off. Olivares says he used to utilize bribe money to pay sources to help in these investigations. Now, regardless of what is happening, Olivares says he can guarantee the dedication of the FBI is 100%. He says the agents will not stop working because of the current situation. Jeff?
Henry, thanks.